Religion, it has a bad taste in my mouth, only because I feel it's very much there for fear based. My parents were always seeking. They were Baptist, Salvation Army, just a little bit of everything. They went to every church. They ended up being Mormon. I don't call myself religious at all. I'm spiritual. I believe in God. I believe in Christ. I believe in Mother Mary. I believe in Buddha. I kind of, believe in the whole essence of all of us are here to teach one another. And all of us are here to learn from one another. I think the thing that got me the most is when I sat in the meeting and all of a sudden there was quiet time. And there was that time for you to get connected to the source, to be able to feel what you needed to feel. The minister wasn't up there saying, oh, we got to do this and we got to do that and you got to believe in this. And I'm going, wow, this is so different. And as I was doing my meditations, I was at home. It just felt like, wow, this is where I need to be. This is where I want to be.
I was born and raised a Quaker. From what I can tell, several generations back on both sides of my family. I've worked for Quakers, for the most part, since about 1980. A lot of it administratively. For about 12 years, I was teaching at Guilford College. And what I have found is that most of us are hungry. We're hungry to know. As some would say, the higher power and our higher selves. Not to fit into a box, not to find the box that's the right size for me to fit into, but for me to come to an understanding about who or what is this spirit and how do I begin to explore, to seek, as we would say as Quakers, to seek that relationship with the divine. The history of Quakerism, started in the mid-1600s in England. England was coming out of the Civil Wars, the English Civil Wars. The political turmoil, the economic turmoil was just running very rampant through England at that particular time. And so George Fox knew that it wasn't right for him. And so he went on a journey. He started walking and talking to people and talking to preachers or professors and really began to search. Church was controlled by the crown. And so Fox knew that there was something more. And so he went on this journey and discovered that direct and immediate access to God. You did not have to go through another person. Each person has this direct and immediate access to God. Then I went even further and discovered that there is that of God within each person, which was very radical, shall I say, at that time, because there was an understanding in England in the mid-1600s that women, they were of no value. And so Quakers had the understanding from the very beginning that women and men were equal, not only in the eyes of God, but in the leadership of this growing movement that was called the Religious Society of Friends. And they wanted the Bible available to all people, not just to those learned people. And so there was very much of a movement and quickly growing. And there were Quakers in the colonies almost as soon as the Quakers got started in England.
We are in an old Quaker meeting house built in 1858, the third meeting house on the site. And it is all original except the floor, which the termites ate. So we had to put down a new one. But otherwise, it is all original. And I have been given the job by my mother-in-law who took care of it. And she said, you're going to take care of it from now on. So for about 25 years, I've been taking care of all of the stuff in here, 700, 800 artifacts in here, and just looking after them. I saved this one just because it was so pretty. Look at that. Look at that penmanship.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Nancy with an E. Nancy Jane Kennedy was born January the 31st, 1831, and deceased, Deceast, February. That's about the best we can do. About 1750 was when this area settled. And Quakers were like flocks of birds. They all went to the same place. 1800 marked the point where they started going west because of the Civil War. Civil War was coming, and they were going to be persecuted because they had already decided to free their slaves. And when I say they, of course it's not 100%. But about the Civil War, Quakers were told in their various meetings that slavery was wrong, get rid of your slaves. Quakers didn't want to own people. So they knew this was going to become a big conflict at some point, and they didn't want to be caught in the middle, although many were. So after 1800, the Quaker population went down, although this stayed fairly strong, but that was pretty much the dividing point of going west. Now this is supposedly, according to my mother-in-law, who's long dead, a stone from the Underground Railroad. And she said, if you look really carefully, it has an X here, and then it has an arrow going right through it, meaning go this way.
Wow.
Underground Railroad is very, 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 very simple, but they didn't write anything down, and so we still don't know the exact route.
Yeah.
But there was a route that started at Guilford College, and we think it came through this area.
There's such a division. There's such, racism and hatred. And I've got a little 6-year-old, and she doesn't understand color. Her brothers and sisters, one's white and 2 are biracial. And so, to her, it's just a family. It's, this is who we are. Me bringing Emma and just loving her and being her around in that love that, she's so accepted, and she just gives it right back, the love and support. And so that's what I see with my belief system, is being able to contribute. That, to me, what it's all about. It's not having to take 100 people and get this done. It's doing it one person at a time. And that's what I really love about here. They hold you in that high energy.
Quakerism is a bunch of testimonies, for one thing. Peace, equality, silence. It's a bunch of testimonies that have molded together because of the way religion was at that time. They picked up these testimonies because they didn't like the way religion was at that time. It's a protest. It's a protest.
So what is a Quaker? Again, it would depend on where we are here in the U.S. with where you are in the U.S. because they're all different stripes of Quakers. Quakers have this understanding that I think is very important. 1, that there is that of God within. 2, that we all have direct and immediate access to God. Some of us will say there is the light within because we don't want to acknowledge a God. So we say that there is that light within each person. For me, that's, again, kind of one of the foundational pieces within Quakerism. But there is that sense that of God, or the light, is within all people. Quakers also had the understanding very early on that we were called to nonviolence. You'll find in some meetings where there are Muslims who are members of the meeting, you'll find Jewish individuals who are part of the meeting. You'll find people who don't claim any relationship with a God or acknowledge that there is a God, but they are part of the fellowship because, again, the community is important that allows them to express that. And then you have more conservative, both theologically and politically and socially, on the other end of the spectrum. And somehow or another, we all consider ourselves Quaker. We're not sure if the other group is Quaker, but we know we are. But, we know that they call themselves Quaker. And so there is that very wide, divergent understanding of Quakerism here in the U.S. primarily. I think if you were to ask most Quakers if they were Christians or if they followed Christ Are they trying to live a Christ-like life? Most of us would say yes, but not to have some definition provided to me or to them, which they would have to affirm, no, that would not be the case. So I guess it's a qualified yes that we would say that we're a Christian, or that Quakerism is Christian. I don't know if there's any kind of established understanding of Quakers and the afterlife and what we say. Certainly in the early on, Quakers would talk about, this earthen vessel, that there is the soul, there is the spirit within. But this earthen vessel, vanishes when we make the transition. Most of us would say that, yes, there is God, a higher power, that our soul, our spirit returns to that. But, I don't know of any kind of common understanding, maybe even within this meeting. Certainly not across the spectrum within Quakerism. What I will say, and I think it's true here, and I think this is partly historical, is that we're to live here, now. It's not about getting up yonder at some future time, but it's about living here fully now as God would intend us to live. It is about maybe even creating a little bit of that heaven here now. That my life on this earth, on this plane, is not about getting to the next plane. It's about being good, but it's about being good not for that future reward, but it's about being good to make a difference here and now. To be good here and now for its own purposes. And again, this meeting, I think most of us would agree to that. They may say it a little differently, but I think, as I know people here, it is about living this life fully and in the presence of God, creating that piece of heaven here on earth.
In early Quakerism, they didn't poo-poo dreams and visions and ESP the way we do now. And we think it's a little hocus pocus now, but it was there in earlier Quakerism, as it probably was in other religions too. We had a old Quaker preacher who lived near here. His name was Malin Hoggett. I think it's all right to long gone. And he had ESP, and so the story among the young people was, let's go to a meeting today and see what Malin Hoggett says. And sure enough, he would call people out. He would say, now you kept the wolf, you gave the woman the wart, but you kept the wolf from that yarn. And he would say to the boys, you overslept and are late to meeting, and you this, and he would call them out in the audience, and things that he had no reason to know. But anyhow, he was a Quaker preacher with ESP. And other people have told me about their dreams. My mother-in-law told me about a dream she had of her child. If he crossed the street that day, he might get hit. And sure enough, there was a wreck out there that day. So it wasn't unusual. And I think it wasn't poo-pooed the way we poo-poo it now and say, oh, that's just witch tales.
I'm going to take you back a little bit to when I was a little kid. I was 4 years old and drowned. And my father did CPR on me and actually brought me back to life. I was already floating and gone. My sister said I was purple, and Dad started doing CPR. And the interesting thing about that was there was a group of 22 young men, students, that were all Seventh-day Adventists. And they immediately got on their knees and started praying. Well, I'm not sure what they were saying, but Dad said that one kid kept saying, don't quit. She's coming. I see her coming back. And my dad's like, okay, keep working harder and harder. And then all of a sudden I sit up, I'm throwing up the water, and I'm sitting up and I'm okay. Of course, they rushed me to the hospital and everything, but that has never left my mind. I don't remember any of that. But when Dad told me later, I said, okay, where did I go then? Where was I? What made me leave and come back? And so it was several years later that I found this young man that had said that. I mean, I looked when I was about 9 or 10, and I said, Dad, who is this guy? Who is this guy? I kept dreaming, I needed an answer. How did you see me? Just kind of being a kid, you have all these questions. And so I finally found him, and he said, when we have a connection with God, and we're open to whatever we see and not see with the physical eyes, you get to see more than what's there. And that just hit home. And I was like, okay, so you saw me coming back and you told my dad not to stop. He goes, oh yeah, several times, several people kept saying, okay, she's gone, let her go. He said, but I saw your spirit just coming back down. And when he would stop, you would just kind of hang there. And he said, that's why I wanted you back in your body, because I knew you were coming back.
Now, personally, if I can go there, I believe, our souls will go back to the soul, the big soul. And I want to say it goes back for nurture and repair and renewal, which may imply, so I'll go ahead and say it, that yes, I believe we come back. Our souls come back, that we've been around several times.
In my senior year and my first year of college, my thing was I really wanted to know what's on the other side. And so I immediately had a friend who used to do meditations, and I called her and I said, hey, are you doing a meditation? She goes, yeah. And I said, I need your help. And I immediately saw, when I just went into a meditation state, I immediately saw my soul just kind of leaving my body and walking around and meeting people. And I'm like, where am I? and I was talking out loud and I didn't know. And she's like, and they recorded and they said that I was giving them answers like, you know what, when we die, we just simply just move on to the next. It's not 3D, it's 4D, but 5D. And she said, that's where we are. We're all right here. We're not floating in the sky. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. We're not sleeping. We're learning. It's just another continual process of learning.
And people saw their dead ones every now and again when they would die. Now we all so doped up we don't see anything, but they would see them. And my aunt, when she died, she looked up and said, oh, look at all the people in this room. And it was her people who had died come together.
I have had the experience of seeing departed friends after they have departed. A few weeks after some of our significant friends have passed, I have sensed them, I have felt them, I have seen them in the meeting room, sitting in their normal spot. I have felt that. And I want to say I've seen them there. Is it because I want to? I don't know. Or were they really there? I don't know. But my experience is that they were there. They were there to let us know that I'm okay. To let us know that, you know what, you're okay. To let us know, keep doing your work.
My junior year, I had a really good friend that died. She was killed in a car wreck. And I can remember being at home and the phone rang. And my mom said, hey, Dee Dee, it's for you. And so I get it. And she's talking to me. Hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Come on, let's go out. And I get quiet because I just heard she had died and she's on the phone with me. And I said, Mom. And my mom goes, what? And I said, listen. And she got it. She goes, it's just a dial tone. And I'm like, well, who was on the phone when they called? She said, I don't know. I didn't recognize the voice. So I immediately went upstairs and I just sat there and I said, okay, what's the message? Where are you? And all I heard was, I'm right here. I just crossed over into the other realm. I can see you. I can see what's going on. You need to go to my mom and give her a hug because she's missing me. I did. I immediately said, Mom, you got to take me over here. We went over there and I walked in and she described what her mom was wearing. And I told my mom, she's going to be wearing a blue dress with the, she's wearing some kind of covering because of the death of her daughter. And my mom kind of looked at me. She's like, okay, whatever, and she was going along with me because she thought this was a grieving process. So when we got there, it was exactly what she had told me. And my mom just looked at me and she's like, okay, this is scary, But I went over and I just hugged her. We didn't even say anything. I just hugged her. And she said, my daughter said you were going to come. A lot of things that we're so afraid of, it's just other beings trying to get our attention. And when we do accept it and we do acknowledge, then that's all they need.
My mother and I were close. Yes, she was my mother, so therefore we were close. But it was another, we would communicate without speaking. We would communicate across distances. My wife and I were living in Indiana, and she called, living here in North Carolina, and said, congratulations. And we said, what? And she was telling us that we were going to have a child, that we were pregnant, and we didn't know that. Anyway, we were close, and a lot of this kind of thing was normal for us. And then Mom passed in February of 83. That August, I went to a meeting, and I got there a day early to rest. And I was exhausted, so I just kind of laid down on the bed. Didn't make it up, I just laid down. Pretty soon after that, I felt the bed mattress compress. And I smelled she would use this body powder. And I smelled that, and I knew that she was there. And she and I have continued to communicate off and on over these, ever how many years, 37 years? Something like that, since then. So that's, I believe that when we make the transition, sometimes our spirits stay around to minister to those who are left behind for a time.
My dad never met my daughter. And so when Emma was born, we actually named her after my mother, Emma, and my wife, Victoria, her mother, Catherine. So her name is Emma Catherine. And when Emma was 2 and 3, when she was able to walk and talk, I was really missing my dad one day. And I came home from work and I walked in, and Emma standing there grinning at me. I said, what? And she said, Pops wants a popsicle. And I looked at her and I said, what did you say? She said, Pops wants a popsicle. I said, well, ask Pops what kind he wants. And she just shook her head at me and she said, you know the only kind he eats. And I'm looking at her going, what? And she said, the red one, silly. And I said, okay. So I went to the freezer and I pulled out a popsicle, and it was red. And I gave it to her, and I opened it and gave it to her. I figured she was going to start eating it. Well, she walked over to my dad's picture and held it there for him. And I said, aren't you going to eat that? And she goes, it's not for me, silly. It's for Pops. And I just started crying. And I looked at her and I said, Emma, I said, how did you know I called him Pops? And she looked at me and she started crying. She said, silly, he misses you. And he said you called him Pops.
We cannot accept what is not science or education. We can't accept it if it is not based in truth, proof, all of that, And I think we're missing out there. We're not recognizing a whole other level, a whole other realm of life, the spiritual life.
What I have found is that I think a lot of people have had these experiences, but they don't know who they can talk to about them. And so how do we create here the comfort?
It shouldn't be about any person. It should be about your personal connection with God. God is all that there is.
And I think most of us feel that every now and then our dearly departed visit us in dreams and visions. But if I tell you about it, you're going to say, oh, she's a little off. So you don't talk about it,
And I had these experiences when I was young. And I didn't know who to talk to.
Yeah.
And like most of us, I got into high school and I said, I'm going to put that on the back burner. I'm going to take it off the stove maybe. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know who to talk to. I wish I'd known my mom's experiences I wish I knew. We were close, but we didn't talk about this because, again, she didn't feel comfortable talking about it either. In Eastern North Carolina, it was really hard to talk about some of this stuff. But I wish I had talked to her.
I would say it's the personal individual of living your truth with the connection of who God is and what God is, and which that shows love.
We need to pay attention. And we need to pay attention to our dreams and our visions. Because for me, Spirit, God is always wanting to communicate with us, always communicating with us. And we're not often receptive to that. We're either too busy, or we're afraid of what we're going to hear, or we're afraid of what other people are going to think. And so we don't hear. But in our dream life, when our conscious mind slows down a little bit, Spirit, the subconscious, can get through to us. And we have to learn to remember and take the lessons from those communications. I say, and when I was, one of your earlier questions was about teaching.
They don't exclude anybody. When someone comes in and needs help, I've never heard someone say, well, why? It's always, okay, let's see what we can do. And that to me brings in community. That brings human, it's not just community as town-wise, it's the country, it's the human connection of everything. And that's what I love about it. And that's what to me as a Quaker is being able to be of service without saying it's service. It's just the love that's there.
What I like about this meeting is that you can come in and explore. One of the posters around the building here has about the fact, we allow you the freedom to discover and use your own language.
It's a collective, and that's what makes it so amazing. It's not just one person giving an answer, it's a collective of everybody. So that's beautiful to me.
We may ask you can you say more about that? But we're not going to say you're wrong. We're going to ask you to help us understand. And I want you to help me to be able to communicate better. Ask me questions, not to say that I'm wrong, but help me to ask me those questions that will help me to be clear about what I want, what I know, and what I understand, so that you can understand. I'm not trying to convince you. You're not trying to convince me. We're just trying to understand one another. That's what I like about this meeting.
I come in and just sat down in the pews and just, you just feel the love, and you feel that the harmony of what I believe is the connection between God and all of us. So yeah, I look forward to coming more when we can get back together, of course, but also being on Zoom. You got the connection of everybody there. You got the love, you got the prayers, you got the, hey, don't give up. I'm right here. You need anything, reach out. And who doesn't want that?
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Tracking Transition.
But if you want to know when we put out any videos, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. That's how to follow.
And to keep up with what we're doing, check out our Instagram and other social media pages. Lastly, a huge thank you to our Patreons, especially Nick and Emily. We'll see ya next week.
Stay classy, stay spooky, keep your pants dry, and we'll see you then.